Zahara stood motionless before the full-length mirror in the master bedroom, her fingers working slowly to fasten the small pearl drop earrings, her mother's old gift from decades ago. The tiny pearls caught the soft bedroom light and shimmered faintly, almost like they were trying to remind her of something she had long forgotten. Her hands trembled just enough for her to notice, though she clenched her jaw and forced them steady. She would not allow even her own reflection to see the nerves. Tonight was the corporate gala for Velocity Media, the advertising agency her husband, Achilles, had built from nothing into a respected name in Atlanta's competitive scene. This was his evening, his victory lap after 6 brutal months of negotiations that had finally landed a major Fortune 500 tech client. Zahara understood the hierarchy clearly. Achilles at the center, glowing under spotlights of praise, while she remained on the edge of the frame. An elegant but non-speaking accessory, she let her gaze drift to the closet where the chosen dress hung waiting. Dark sapphire silk, floor-length, cut with clean, understated lines. When Achilles had first seen it months ago in the boutique, he had given one curt nod. It's fine, not too flashy. That was the highest praise the dress would ever receive from him. Zahara ran her palm slowly down the cool fabric, beautiful, expensive, and completely forgettable, just like the role she had quietly settled into over the past decade and a half. Zahara, you almost ready? We have to leave in 30 minutes. Achilles' voice rolled out from the bathroom, deep and impatient. I don't want to be late. This is a huge night. You understand? Yes, almost done, she answered, voice even. She slipped the dress over her head, feeling the silk glide against her skin, then reached behind to zip the side. A huge night for him. She knew the script by heart. He would stride into the room like he owned it. Accept handshakes and backslaps, recount war stories from the pitch process. Let everyone marvel at his charisma and closing skills. She would stand one step behind and to the right, smiling softly, nodding at the right moments, ready with a polite thank you. Whenever someone remembered to include her in the conversation, and someone always asked the inevitable question, "So Zahara, what do you do?" She had tried different answers over the years. I take care of our home. I support my husband's work. Once, in a fleeting moment of defiance, she had said, I used to be an interior designer. But the follow-up questions became awkward. So she eventually settled on the safest version. I'm a homemaker. The word tasted like ash every single time. 20 years earlier, she had been someone else entirely. Zahara had graduated top of her class from Howard University with a degree in interior design. Her portfolio, small, residential projects even as a student, had already caught the eye of 2 boutique firms in DC. She dreamed in textures and light. Exposed brick softened by linen drapes, mid-century chairs paired with lush indoor plants, rooms that made people exhale when they walked in. She wanted her own studio one day, a modest space with big windows, white walls, and a brass nameplate that read, Zahara Lewis Designs. Then she met Achilles. He was a marketing major at a nearby university, sharp, ambitious, always moving 3 steps ahead. Their first real conversation happened at a mutual friend's cookout. He talked about branding like it was poetry. She talked about space like it was emotion. By the end of the night, they were sitting on the back steps sharing a warm beer, planning futures they hadn't earned yet. He called her Z. She called him Lee, until everyone else started using Achilles as his professional name, and it stuck. For the first few years, he kept his promises. They rented a cramped 1-bedroom in Southeast DC, peeling paint, noisy neighbors, windows that rattled when the metro went past. Both of them worked long hours. Achilles started at a small boutique agency. Zahara landed an assistant position at a residential design firm. In the evenings, they sat at their tiny kitchen table with $2 wine from the corner store, sketching ideas on napkins, laughing about how one day they would make it. We can do anything, Z, he used to whisper against her temple. You'll have your studio. I'll have my firm. 10 years, watch. Life moved faster than the timeline they had drawn. Achilles was good, really good, at reading rooms, finding pain points, selling visions nobody knew they needed. 5 years in, he was running a department. 3 years after that, he launched Velocity Media with 2 partners and a shoestring budget that somehow stretched. Clients followed. Money followed. The tiny apartment became a sleek condo in Buckhead, Atlanta. Vacations replaced weekend getaways. Designer suits replaced thrift store blazers. And somewhere in that upward spiral, Zahara's own trajectory flattened and then disappeared. It started innocently. "Z, you're home more. Can you help with some agency paperwork?" Then scouting office locations. Then designing the Velocity headquarters herself, pro bono of course, for our future. Later came the suggestion that felt like love at the time. "Why don't you stop working altogether? Why run around Metro Atlanta measuring other people's cramped apartments? We have plenty now. Focus on the house, on yourself. I want my wife to look the part, not like some stressed-out sister doing double shifts." At 43, looking back, she could finally hear the sentence for what it really was. But at 30-something, newly moved to Atlanta, still in love, still believing in their dream, it sounded like care. She quit. Slowly, invisibly, she became the polished wife in the background, gym-toned, skin flawless, hair always perfect, smile always ready. She cooked meals he barely ate at home. She kept the condo magazine ready. She greeted him with warmth even. When he came in at 11 p.m. smelling faintly of whiskey and someone else's perfume, she became convenient. Achilles appeared in the bedroom doorway, buttoning the cuffs of his crisp white shirt. The custom suit hugged his shoulders perfectly. At 45, he still carried the lean, athletic build from his college basketball days, now softened just enough by good living to look powerful rather than boyish. His fade was fresh, his cologne expensive and understated. He glanced at her dress. "Oh, you're wearing that one." "All right, it's fine." A pause. "Just don't overdo the makeup, okay? And try not to look bored tonight. There'll be important people. I don't want them thinking my wife is dying at the gala." Zahara swallowed the familiar tightness in her throat. Once those words would have stung for hours. Now they simply landed and slid off like rain on glass. She nodded once. "Ready when you are." The restaurant was predictably stunning. Panoramic windows framing twinkling. Midtown Atlanta, ambient lighting that flattered every face, waitstaff moving like silent choreography. 30 or so guests, agency team members and spouses. Key clients, a few parent company executives. Champagne flutes caught the light like tiny chandeliers. Achilles dove straight into the crowd. Handshakes, laughter, quick hugs, backslaps. Zahara stayed close enough to be included, but far enough not to intrude. She smiled when expected, answered polite questions, let the conversation flow around her. The wife of a major client, a tall, stately woman in her late 50s wearing understated diamonds, turned to Zahara during a lull. "Zahara, darling, what's your hustle? Are you in media too?" "No, ma'am. I'm a homemaker." "Oh, how lovely." The woman smiled indulgently. "So you have time for your home? Maybe a garden?" "I stopped working about 10 years ago and honestly, it's been a blessing." "No schedule. You can do whatever you want." Zahara nodded, lips curved in the practiced smile. "Whatever you want." She couldn't remember the last time she had done something solely because she wanted it. Dinner moved to the main table. Achilles sat at the head, Zahara beside him. He was electric, jokes landing perfectly. Industry war stories drawing roars of laughter. Compliments deflected with just the right amount of false modesty. Everyone hung on his words. The director of the parent company rose, glass in hand, voice booming. "Tonight we're not just celebrating a deal. We're celebrating a breakthrough. And it's all thanks to the talent, persistence, and charisma of our man Achilles." "To Achilles!" Glasses lifted. Applause thundered. Achilles stood, hands raised in humble thanks, eyes shining. "Thank you, thank you." He waited for the room to quiet. "Success is always a team effort. Without all of you, none of this happens. You are the best team anyone could ask for." More applause, cheers. He paused, let the moment breathe, then turned his gaze toward Zahara. Something flickered in his eyes. Amusement, perhaps. Or the spark of a punchline he'd been saving. And also, the smirk widened. "I want to raise a glass to my wife, my Zay." Every head swiveled toward her. "To my youthful mistake." The room exploded. Laughter, loud, genuine, rolling waves of it. Someone whooped. Glasses clinked. Achilles beamed, clearly delighted with his own cleverness, waiting for Zahara to join in, to play along like she always had. She didn't. She sat frozen, smile locked in place, while something deep inside her cracked wide open, not with noise, but with absolute glacial silence. A youthful mistake. 20 years. 20 years of stepping back, of forgiving late nights and business trip perfume, of pretending the diminishing comments didn't land, of burying her own ambition under his. And now, in front of everyone who mattered to him, she was reduced to a punchline. She lifted her glass, drank the champagne in one long swallow. The bubbles burned. No one noticed her eyes had gone flat and cold. The rest of the dinner passed in mechanical motion. Small bites, tiny sips, polite nods. Achilles patted her shoulder once or twice. "Don't be mad, it was just a joke." She nodded, smiled. Inside, a strange, calm detachment settled over her like frost. She was watching her life from outside her body. A young account executive in her late 20s leaned close during dessert. "Don't pay him any mind. Men talk before they think. My guy says dumb stuff too, then acts shocked when I get upset." Zahara looked at her, bright, ambitious, still carrying that pre-betrayal glow. For a second, she saw her own 25-year-old self staring back. "Thank you," she murmured. "I'm fine." But nothing was fine. Something had shifted irreversibly. Later, when Achilles was deep in conversation about a new pitch, Zahara excused herself to the balcony. Cool night air hit her face. Atlanta glittered below, endless lights, endless motion. She gripped the railing and asked herself the questions she had avoided for years. When had she stopped being Zahara to him? When had she become furniture? And most importantly, when had she allowed it? She stayed outside until the wind dried the dampness from her cheeks. Then she returned to her seat, finished her drink, and felt the decision lock into place. No scene, no tears, no confrontation, just action. She would show him exactly what kind of mistake she really was. The condo was silent except for the low, rhythmic snoring coming from the bedroom. Achilles lay sprawled across the king-sized bed. Still in his dress shirt and trousers, one arm flung over the edge, mouth slightly open. It was just past 1:30 a.m. Zahara sat alone at the kitchen island, cradling her mother's blue, forget-me-not mug filled with chamomile tea that had long gone lukewarm. The wall clock ticked steadily. Each second felt heavier than the last. She stared at the dark liquid in the mug, watching tiny ripples form and disappear whenever her fingers brushed the handle. The words from the gala still echoed in her skull. Not as pain anymore, but as clarity. A youthful mistake. They no longer cut. They had burned away everything soft and hesitant inside her, leaving only a cold, sharp edge. She took one last sip of tea, set the mug down with deliberate care, and opened her laptop. The screen's blue light bathed her face. She logged into the joint account first, the one Achilles monitored like a hawk. He gave her a debit card with a pitiful monthly limit and questioned every charge over $50. Where did that $200 go, Z? Why so much on groceries this month? She had always answered like a child caught sneaking cookies. But tonight she was not asking permission. 3 years earlier, her grandmother had passed away in South Carolina. The modest 2-bedroom house her grandmother had owned outright sold for just under $100,000. Zahara had deposited the entire sum into the joint account as the down payment for this very condo imbaked. Achilles had smiled then, patted her shoulder, and said, "Perfect. It's our home anyway. Joint property." The condo title, of course, was in his name alone, Achilles Smay. She had never questioned it. She had trusted him completely. She no longer did. Zahara opened a second tab to the online banking portal of a small credit union where, 1 month ago on a quiet afternoon when Achilles was at a client lunch, she had opened a personal account in her own name. At the time, it had felt like a tiny act of rebellion, a secret corner of independence she didn't quite know she needed. Now it was her escape hatch. She verified the routing and account numbers twice. Then she began. First transfer, $3,000. She confirmed the text message, code that arrived on her phone. Within seconds. Transaction complete. Second, $2,000. Third, $4,000. She moved the money in increments small enough to avoid immediate fraud alerts. But steadily, relentlessly. Each confirmation chime was quiet, almost polite. Her breathing stayed even. Her hands did not shake. By 2:45 a.m. she had moved nearly $90,000 into her personal account. The remaining balance in the joint account would look suspicious when he checked it tomorrow. But the transfers were legal. She had full access. No forgery, no theft in the eyes of the law. She closed the laptop and finished the cold tea in one swallow. Next, the study. Achilles' study was more showpiece than workspace. Massive mahogany desk, leather armchair that still smelled faintly of the showroom, shelves lined with thick marketing books he had never opened. The safe was built into the wall behind a framed Velocity Media logo. Zahara knew the combination. He had chosen it years ago with the arrogance of a man who believed no one would ever dare challenge him. Their wedding date, June 15th. She entered the numbers. The lock clicked softly. Inside, neat stacks of $100 bills, emergency cash he always kept. Distrustful of banks, despite running a multi-million-dollar agency. She counted quickly. $5,000. She took every bill. Above the cash sat folders, stock options, bond certificates, a few investment account statements. She slid them all into a large manila envelope she found in the bottom desk drawer. At the very back of the safe lay a small black velvet box. She opened it. Gold cufflinks, his father's, passed down before the old man died. Achilles had never worn them, but he spoke of them with rare reverence. Zahara looked at the gleaming metal for a long moment. Then she took them too. Let him feel what it was like to lose something precious. She closed the safe, spun the dial, and left the room exactly as she had found it. Next, documents. In the living room cabinet, she found the folder labeled Important Papers. Marriage certificate, gone into her purse. Her passport, gone. The condo purchase agreement. She flipped to the appendix and photographed every page with her phone, there in black and white. Initial payment of $100,000. From the account of Zahara Fisme, her grandmother's money. Proof that she had contributed substantially to this life he now treated as his alone. She also found 3 years of bank statements. Regular transfers of $500 to an unfamiliar account. Not the 3-year affair she had long suspected, but an 18-month one. He had been supporting someone else with their money. Zahara photographed every relevant page. In divorce proceedings, those images would matter. She did not cry. She did not tremble. She worked methodically, like someone packing up a life she no longer wished to live in. At 3 a.m., she opened an airline website. Milan. The name had surfaced in her mind without warning. She had always wanted to see Italy, the light on old stone, the curve of arches, the way history and beauty lived together so effortlessly. Achilles had promised they would go. Every time the promise died under the weight of a big project. No time right now, maybe next year. She found a direct flight leaving Atlanta at 8 a.m. business class. 1 ticket, C200. She booked it using the joint credit card still linked to the old account. Next, accommodation. A small furnished flat near the Duomo. 1 month. 2,200 booked. Same card. She leaned back in the chair. It was done. She walked into the bedroom. Achilles had not moved. His face in sleep still held that faint smug satisfaction. The same look he wore when he closed a deal or landed a laugh at someone else's expense. Zahara stood in the doorway and watched him for a long minute. 20 years. Half her life. She had loved this man once with every fiber of herself. She had reshaped her entire future around his. And he had called her a mistake. No anger flared. Just a quiet, final emptiness. She pulled her small carry-on suitcase from the closet, the one she used for short weekend trips he never joined. She packed light, underwear, a few comfortable outfits, makeup bag, chargers, laptop, documents, passport, the manila envelope, the cash, her mother's pearl earrings still in their velvet pouch, and one single photograph of her mother smiling in a summer dress. Nothing else. Clothes could be replaced. Things did not matter. Freedom did. She zipped the suitcase and carried it to the hallway. Back in the kitchen, she checked the time, 3:30 a.m. The flight was in less than 5 hours. She would call a ride at 6:00, plenty of time. She returned to the bathroom, looked at herself in the mirror. Tired eyes, but calm, determined. She opened her makeup bag, pulled out the tube of bright red lipstick. Achilles had once mocked, "Are you hitting the streets? Wear decent colors," and painted her lips slowly, deliberately. Then she wrote on the mirror in large, bold letters. Mistake corrected. She stepped back and studied her work. Clean, clear, final. At 5 a.m., she called the rideshare app. Destination, Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport. Car arriving in 15 minutes. While she waited, she moved through the condo one last time. The living room. Furniture Achilles chose without asking her opinion. The artwork. Modern abstracts she had never liked. The kitchen. High-end appliances she rarely used because he preferred takeout. The bedroom. The enormous bed where they had slept like strangers for years, each hugging their own side. This was not a home. It was a beautiful cage. She entered the hallway, opened the small chest near the door, and slipped off her wedding ring. Gold band, small diamond. Once it had meant forever. Now it was only metal. She placed it beside the condo keys. Her phone buzzed. The car was outside. Zahara put on her coat, picked up the suitcase and her purse, and opened the door. The hallway was quiet. Dawn had not yet broken, but the eastern sky was beginning to lighten. She closed the door softly behind her. No slam, no drama. Just the gentle click of a chapter ending. The driver was a middle-aged black man with kind eyes. He helped lift the suitcase into the trunk without asking unnecessary questions. Airport, right? Yes. The car pulled away smoothly. Zahara looked back once. The building stood dark and indifferent. Somewhere on the fourth floor, her old life still slept. They drove through empty streets. Streetlights glowed amber. The city was still dreaming. After a few minutes, the driver spoke quietly. You leaving for long? Zahara paused, then answered, Forever. He nodded once. I got you. No more words passed between them. They reached the airport quickly. No morning traffic yet. Zahara paid, retrieved her suitcase, and walked into the terminal. The check-in agent smiled. Business class to Milan, boarding in 90 minutes. Checking any bags? No, carry-on only. Boarding pass in hand, she cleared security and found a seat by the window. Outside, the sky was turning pale lavender. The sun was rising. She checked her phone, 6:30 a.m. Achilles would probably wake around 10. He would stumble into the kitchen looking for coffee, see her absence, assume she had gone shopping or to the gym. Then he would walk into the bathroom and see the mirror. Then the empty safe. Then the account balance. Zahara allowed herself one small, private smile. She opened her contacts, scrolled to his name, and blocked the number. The flight was called at 7:30. She stood, walked to the gate, and boarded. The business class seat was wide and comfortable. The flight attendant brought champagne before takeoff. Zahara accepted the glass and sipped slowly. The bubbles danced on her tongue. The plane taxied, accelerated, lifted. Atlanta shrank beneath her. She leaned her head against the window and watched the city disappear. Goodbye, old life, she whispered. Hello, new one. For the first time in 20 years, she felt the weight of expectation lift completely. She closed her eyes and let the plane carry her forward. The small Milan apartment smelled faintly of fresh paint and old wood. Zahara stood at the tall window, cradling a steaming mug of cappuccino, watching morning light spill across terracotta rooftops. In the distance, the spires of the Duomo rose like pale stone, lace against a soft blue sky. It had been exactly 1 week since the plane touched down at Malpensa Airport, and for the first time in many years she woke up. Without the low-grade tension that had become her constant companion, she no longer checked her phone for messages she would never answer. Achilles had tried, first from his number, then from new ones he must have borrowed from colleagues or friends. She blocked each one without reading the voicemails. Eventually the calls slowed, then stopped. The silence felt like breathing room. The first days in Milan had been quiet, almost dreamlike. She walked aimlessly through narrow streets, past gelaterias still shuttered in the early morning, past bakeries exhaling warm yeast and sugar. She sat on benches in small piazzas, watching elderly men play cards, mothers pushing strollers, delivery scooters weaving between pedestrians. No one knew her name. No one expected anything from her. That anonymity was a gift she had not realized she was starving for. Every morning she returned to the same corner cafe near her flat. The owner, Giulia, a stout woman in her mid-50s with gray hair swept into a loose bun and warm brown eyes, had noticed her immediately. Buongiorno, Giulia had called on the second day. Cappuccino, per favore? Zahara had nodded, still uncertain with the language. Giulia made the coffee without hurry, set it down with a small plate holding a plain croissant Zahara hadn't ordered. I didn't ask for this, Zahara said in English. Giulia waved a hand. A gift? You are new here. I see you walk past every day, always alone. Vacation? Zahara hesitated. No, starting over. Giulia studied her for a long moment, then pulled out the chair across the small table and sat. The cafe was empty except for them. I understand, she said simply. 20 years ago I ran away too, from Sicily. My husband drank. He thought I belonged to him. I took my daughter, one suitcase, and came here. No money, no job, only fear and hope. 5 years later I bought this place. Small but mine. Zahara's throat tightened. How did you manage? Many ways. Waitress first, then dishwasher. Then I learned to cook properly, saved every euro. But the hardest thing? Julia tapped her chest, believing I deserved happiness. He told me for years I was nothing without him. I almost believed it. Then one day, I decided falling apart alone was better than staying and being invisible. Zahara looked down at the foam on her cappuccino. I needed to hear that. Julia patted her hand. Come every morning. You'll be my guest until you find your feet. Women help women, see? From that day on, Zahara did. Julia taught her simple phrases. Grazie. Quanto costa? Buongiorno, arrivederci. Corrected her gently. Laughed with her when she mixed up words. In return, Zahara told her pieces of her story, not the whole thing, just enough. Julia never judged. She simply nodded and poured another coffee. Zahara had also enrolled in an intensive Italian course, 3 hours every weekday in a bright classroom near Brera. Her classmates were a small, eclectic group, a Brazilian programmer named Rafael, a Japanese art student named Yuki, an older German couple who wanted to retire in Tuscany. No one asked prying questions. They were all, in their own way, transplants rebuilding. On the third day, the instructor, a young man named Luca with quick smiles and endless patience, asked everyone to introduce themselves and say what they did. I'm a programmer, Rafael said. I study art, Yuki answered softly. When Zahara's turn came, she paused. I'm an interior designer. The words felt foreign on her tongue. She hadn't claimed that title in 20 years. Luca nodded as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Bene, Milan is full of design work. You'll find something. After class, Yuki approached her in the hallway. You really are a designer? I was, Zahara admitted. A long time ago. Do you want to go back? Zahara thought of Achilles laughing when she mentioned taking classes again. Who's going to hire you? You haven't worked in 20 years. She thought of Julia's words. The hardest part is believing you have the right. Maybe, she said. Yuki wrote down a name and address on a scrap of paper. A friend works at a small studio. They need an assistant. Just try. Zahara stared at the card for 2 days before she called. The woman who answered, Alessandra, sounded brisk but kind. Come tomorrow at 2. We speak English too. No problem. The studio occupied the second floor of an old building with cracked stucco and enormous windows. Inside it smelled of linseed oil, fresh coffee, and possibility. Sketches covered the walls, fabric swatches spilled from baskets. A mood board held pinned photographs of mid-century chairs and terrazzo floors. Alessandra was perhaps 45. Short dark hair, bright red lipstick, sleeves rolled to her elbows. Tell me about yourself. Zahara kept it brief. Howard degree? Early work in D.C., long family-related break. Why now? Alessandra asked. Family is finished, Zahara said simply. I'm ready to begin again. Alessandra handed her a folder. A client wants her bedroom updated. Small space, north-facing windows. Little natural light. What would you do? Zahara opened the file. The room was cramped, dim, colorless. And suddenly ideas arrived the way they used to. Clear, confident, almost impatient to be drawn. Light colors first, she began slowly. Warm white walls, maybe soft beige or cream. A large mirror opposite the window to bounce whatever light comes in. Minimal furniture, nothing heavy. Linen bedding, cotton throws. Living plants for life and oxygen. And layered lighting, wall sconces, a floor lamp, maybe hidden LED strips. Alessandra listened, head tilted. And if she loves dark colors? Then one accent wall, deep blue or emerald, but keep everything else pale. Otherwise, the room will feel like a cave. Alessandra smiled. You said you haven't worked in a long time. Doesn't feel like it. When can you start? Zahara blinked. You're hiring me? We're small. Pay isn't huge, but the work is good. Does that work? Yes, Zahara breathed. Yes. Her first project was for a recently divorced woman in her late 40s who wanted every trace of her marriage erased. Fresh, new, mine, the client said. Zahara understood perfectly. She proposed pale walls with bold accents, mustard yellow cushions, turquoise curtains, trailing ivy and terracotta pots. When the installation finished and the client walked in, she cried. This is exactly what I needed, she whispered, hugging Zahara tightly. You didn't just make a beautiful room. You gave me a place to start again. Zahara walked home that evening feeling something she hadn't felt in decades. Usefulness, purpose, her own worth measured not by someone else's approval, but by the quiet joy in another woman's eyes. Months passed in a gentle rhythm. Work at the studio, Italian lessons, evening walks through Parco Sempione or along the Navigli canals. She made friends slowly, Julia at the cafe, Yuki from class, Alessandra and Marco, the 3D renderer, at work. And then there was Professor Marco. They met by chance one Saturday afternoon in the park. He was sitting on a bench reading Dante. She was struggling through the same book with a pocket dictionary. He noticed her furrowed brow and smiled. "Dante is hard even for Italians," he said in lightly accented English. They talked. His name was Marco too, older. Mid-50s, graying hair, kind eyes behind wire glasses, an art history professor at the university. He spoke about Milan the way lovers speak about each other, quietly, reverently, pointing out hidden corners tourists never saw, a secret vineyard behind a stone wall, the tiny Poldi Pezzoli Museum with its quiet masterpieces. They began meeting on weekends. Never with pressure, never with expectation. Just walks, coffee, conversation, museums, small trattorias where they shared wine and pasta and stories. He never asked about her past unless she offered. She never offered much. It was enough. 6 months after she left Atlanta, an email arrived. Zahara stared at the subject line for a long time before opening it. Zahara, I realize now how wrong I was. I didn't appreciate you. I took you for granted. I behaved terribly, and I'm sorry. I want to fix this. Please come home. I'll change, I promise. I need you. Without you, I finally understand how empty everything was. Achilles. She read it twice. Once those words would have cracked her open. Once she would have packed a bag the same night. Now she felt only calm distance. She opened a reply. Achilles. You called me a youthful mistake, I agree. The mistake was mine, tolerating disrespect for 20 years. Giving up my dreams for yours. Believing love meant one person gives everything and the other takes. Thank you for the lesson. I finally learned it. Don't write again. Live your life. I will live mine. Zahara. She pressed send and closed the laptop. Another 3 months slipped by. Autumn arrived. Leaves turned gold and rustled underfoot. Zahara's Italian improved. She no longer hesitated at the butcher or the market. She laughed more easily. She slept deeply. One evening, she and Professor Marco sat at a small table in Piazza Santo Stefano. The air was crisp. Lanterns glowed in the trees. He asked quietly, Zahara, may I ask something personal? Of course. Are you happy? She looked across the piazza at people strolling, laughing, living. She thought of the condo in Buckhead that had never felt like hers. She thought of the mirror with red lipstick. She thought of the plane lifting off from Atlanta. Yes, she said. For the first time in many years, I'm happy. He smiled. It shows. When we first met, you were like a closed book. Now you've opened. You've blossomed. They finished their wine and walked slowly through the evening streets. Zahara felt steady beside him, whole, self-contained, not half of someone else's story. Her phone buzzed once. An unknown number. She glanced at the screen, then pressed decline and blocked it. The past had no claim on her anymore. She stopped on a small bridge over one of the canals. Lights reflected on the black water like scattered coins. Marco stood beside her, silent, letting her take in the view. Thank you, Achilles, she thought, the words soft and final. For showing me exactly who I refuse to be again. For calling me a mistake, because in that moment, I finally understood. The only real mistake was betraying myself for so long. The wind lifted her hair. Distant music floated from an open window. Milan breathed around her, alive and unhurried. Zahara smiled into the night. The future was hers. And it was beautiful.